All right, it's so great to have you today, Preston. I know it's an early one over there in San Francisco, so I can't thank you enough for making the time today.
I'm excited to be here, James. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I'll just provide a bit of context on you for those who don't know. Preston is the co-founder of Chubbies and Loop Returns, and I'll tell you, I've been a customer of Chubbies for forever. A new Chubbies bathing suit was always at the top of my Christmas list every year as a kid. And my favorite bathing suit to this day remains the classic swim trunks with the On Fuego design. So it's pretty cool to get to talk to the maker of these products. Just to kind of kick things off, Preston, could you give just a brief introduction of what Chubbies is for anyone who doesn't know, and maybe explain how you and your co-founders started the brand?
Sure. Yeah, so Chubbies is a weekend apparel brand, primarily men's apparel, and generally known for, to your point, printed swim trunks and generally shorter shorts, which are much more normal now, but in 2011 were not at all the norm. And we got the business started, gosh, this was, yeah, 2011. So four friends from college who had been quote unquote working for the man for some time and realized we weren't too good at it, nor did we really want to do it. So we were entrepreneurs in search of a company, and we realized we didn't study computer science in college or anything like that. So we thought that a natural a natural business that we might be able to create as a consumer brand, and then it was what the product should be. And we all generally enjoyed shorter shorts. I played rugby in college. Two of the founders played soccer at Stanford. And the fourth spent a lot of time growing up in the Southeast, where um, in Southeast of the United States, shorter shorts are just much more the norm. And we felt, at least at the time, that there was a product gap in the market where it was just impossible to get. You had to go to either thrift stores or cut your own shorts. There just wasn't anything out there. But I think more important than that was a missing, or at least a kind of like a ridiculous vibe, at least in our opinion, as it relates to what men's fashion should be. It was very serious. It was very, we're too cool for you. You're not invited. It was very much, you have to look a certain way and act a certain way and do photo shoots in a certain way. And we thought that was the worst and should change because it didn't speak to us, and it didn't feel like the sort of vibe that should um, represent a consumer brand. So we just thought, let's just do the opposite of everything that's being done right now. And at the beginning, it was very much, let's just try to make a sample of a pair of shorts and see if we could even do that. One of us was actually a person who had worked in apparel before. The three others had no idea how to create product. And one of the funny things was that the first person who we tried to get to make a pair of shorts just took our money, and we, again, like it was something like $10,000 just down the tube, which at that point many people would have just been like, screw this sucks. But we ended up finding someone else, and they made the first few samples. And I think at that point it was just sort of like, this is awesome, there's something there. But at the beginning it was just, let's be ourselves. We made the product for ourselves. We felt like the need was there, and we were our first customers, and then it was our friends, and then it was our friends of friends. And that was the genesis, the original genesis of the business.
Well, I can tell you my friend group is certainly happy that the short trend worked out because that's all we wear to this day. So
It's
uh,
great.
that's great to
It's
hear.
awesome.
I'm curious. So tell me a little bit about what was going on for you at my age. So it's your final year at Stanford and you're about to enter the workforce. What do you remember going through your head in terms of career and life?
So just think about, I mean, so 2008 global financial crisis, unemployment up, hiring way down. It was tougher. It was a really tough time. I mean, it's tough now, but there was a lot of stress and anxiety around what am I going to do? What's the right job to get? Uh,
Can relate to that.
Interviews, all these sorts of things. So it was a difficult time. So, my one of the coolest experiences that I had, because I'm from a town that really didn't have any kind of technology entrepreneurship, no startups, nothing like that. So being in college, it opened my eyes to what was possible. Not only the ability to start a business, but to grow something and solve problems at a large scale. So at the time, it was very much enjoy these wonderful friendships that 15 years later all exist to this day and are extremely valuable, both on a personal and professional level. And then it was, gosh, I just want to find a job and do something. So I started as an intern at a company that received some venture funding and started, let's call it, with 2 or 3 months left in my fourth year, and ended up just staying on for the next 4.5 years. It was a startup. It was, let's call it, I started when it was maybe 10 people, and then it was maybe 40, 45 when I ended up leaving to do Chubbies. And I knew nothing, but I learned so much during that period of time. So my takeaway is basically find something where you think you can learn a ton and that's like fast moving and exploring, doing something new and exciting. And at least that was a fit for me,
Yeah,
because I'm not a fit for doing sort of like stable, well trodden paths. So if that's a fit for you, by all means. But that was a little bit of the vibe and the environment in the fourth year.
that's cool that you got a taste for the startup environment before eventually starting your own company. But my next question was going to be what ultimately gave you the conviction to leave your corporate job and try the entrepreneurial path?
Yeah. So a couple of things. We started Chubbies on a nights and weekends basis. I don't remember how long, but it was at least a year that we were doing it on a nights and weekends basis, which was great because one of the misconceptions around entrepreneurship is you're extremely risk taking, but we were very risk averse. And so we wanted validation. I think we were at something like a $2 million annual run rate before we quit our jobs. And not all of us were able to quit our jobs at the same time. I mean, there was definitely a transition period, but it was the revenue piece, but it was also a feeling of traction and pull from a customer. I wouldn't say we had full product market fit, but it certainly felt like there was a momentum and qualitative validation that there's really something there, both on the product and on the brand side, where people wanted to be involved. And it felt like there was a clarity. I think one of the things that we really wanted to create was either someone who was very excited about what we were doing or someone who just absolutely hated it, but not have people who were apathetic. And we got that. And to us, that helped us understand that, okay, there's something here.
Um, Preston, I want to dive deeper into how you kind of scaled Chubbies into what it is today. So, listening to various entrepreneurs talk, I've heard them stress the importance of storytelling your brand to the customer. So I'm curious as to what your secret was to brand building, building a community and getting the customers to really know you.
So we started with no money. So when you start with no money, you have to do all of the free things that you can do to get the word out, to get people excited about what you're doing. And I think that's the absolute best way to get started. And it was very much, as I was mentioning earlier, getting this groundswell of people who were just excited about what we were doing. Friends of friends. I think one of the things that I see today is a rush to running Facebook ads. And not that that doesn't work, but the value of looking your customer straight in the face and having to create content in a brand where you would be proud to stand in front of the person who sees the content you put out and have them say, that was awesome. And I think that was the core. We put so much time and energy, not only in the product, which is obvious, but in all of the content, all like just everything top to bottom. And I think that really mattered because that separated us from the noise. A men's pair of shorts is the commodity of all commodities. I mean, and anyone can go to Amazon.com and get a $5 pair of shorts, right? So it's like, why fundamentally, it's why do you think about us? Why do you seek us out versus the millions of other producers of shorts? And obviously, there was a distinctive component to the product that it was generally shorter and like a fully elastic waist, but similar products did exist. So I think in terms of what could be helpful for the listeners here, starting with just free stuff and just trying to be as creative as possible, trying to do the biggest, most memorable, bold thing that you could possibly do were some of the things that I think got us started in the early days. The other was just getting a university or college ambassador program going where it allowed us to find people who were just extremely excited. Like, even though we had no ambassadors, we still made it seem like we had a million ambassadors who were applying, and it was a very competitive process. And it became that, but at the beginning, it was very much like making it feel like there was a lot of desirability and demand, which at the end of the day, brand building is just ultimately defined by desirability. Now, it's how you get there is the question. That's different for every brand. But then over time, I would say we started to, once we got a little bit of money and we thought about scaling, the thought was, okay, you got to start running ads on Meta, and that's the only way you can really reach a large audience. I'd say if I were to do it again, probably would have held off on doing that, because it becomes something where you can get a little bit lazy and you can start to be beholden to some of these metrics and data that can tell you that you're being successful. But then when you start to look at the fundamentals of your business, you're not really growing the brand. And I think it's also important to clarify what brand means. Like, branding is everything, that you do, every word that you put out, every picture that you put out, what your product is, your packaging, how your customer service team interacts with your customers. But your brand is fundamentally, like, in the consumer's mind, it's the reason why they seek you out rather than having to be prompted by an ad. And I think that's the biggest thing that I would recommend is build up the machine that gets people to come to you without having to put hey, here's my product, it's 15% off and you got to buy it in the next 15 minutes. It's so easy to go down that route, and we did, but we then had to realize that that was not the route we wanted to go down. So if you could skip that pain in that learning process, you might grow slightly slower, but that's not necessarily the case. You'll definitely grow a lot more profitably. And that then shows up in much more like organic, profitable customer acquisition. So I know I'm getting a little bit tactical, but that's the core of building a consumer brand. It's creating that very clear message and thought to mind where they seek you out rather than having to just barrage them with DR ads. Not that we didn't do that at all, and not that we still don't do that, but it's not having an over reliance on those sorts of things, because that is the opposite of brand building. And that is building that brand and that fundamental association where people come to you because they know exactly what you do and why they want to join your community and join your ethos and be a participant in your story. That's the thing that you should focus on, not getting really good at Facebook ads.
Oh yeah, and that's exactly what you guys have done. At least from what I've seen over the years. Like, I remember you saying in your early days, you would put a square reader in your backpack, go out into the park, on the beach, and bring your chubby shorts with you and sell face to face and try to develop a brand that way. And then even today, now I see videos on Instagram of people rollerblading with footballs, mullets, all these things. So it's really cool to see the way you've established your brand and the unique ethos you've evoked. But um, one other thing I wanted to dive into here was you guys are on Shopify. That's how you guys brought your website about. And recently, the COO Shopify came to speak at Queen's. And his name's Kaz, and he mentioned that obtaining a startup idea from a person is really only worth a pint of beer. The success really comes down to the execution of the idea. So my question to you is, how much of Chubby's success do you think had to do with being in the right place at the right time, with the trend towards men's short shorts and this new style of men's apparel? Or do you attribute all the success to your team at Chubbies and your founders?
That's a great question. The first thing I would say is likely all of the above. You mentioned Shopify. Uh, Back in 2011, or before that, let's say just a short period of time before that, it would cost maybe $1 million and take a year to just get any kind of an e-com store up and running where you could transact. So massive tailwinds from the technology perspective, which there are many today. I don't know what it would be, whether it be generative AI or the ability to generate product very quickly, test where demand might be very quickly. But these things exist and these tailwinds are real. The initial distinction of the product, I think, really mattered. But to your final point, the team, the people, the execution, the passion of people hammering away at this idea over a decade and a half, making mistakes, just getting like 1% better every day. But most importantly, not quitting. Like, I think that's the only failure, is quitting. And there's always a way. And I think that's the way that we always thought about it. So again, it's impossible to just sort of attribute to a short list of things, but it's very much the mindset of there's infinite opportunity out there. There's a limited set of people who are willing to go out there and create something from nothing. But for the people who do and can architect their life in such a way where they are so devoted to that, where there isn't even the idea of sort of like a work-life balance. It's very much like I self-actualize through my work, my craft. It's very closely tied to my purpose. I just think that's, for me and people like me, like that is the fullest expression of a life well lived. So it's that. I mean, I think it's just committing over the long term, because it takes time. These things take time. I mean, it was not obvious that Chubbies would be a success for many, 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 many years. And it's one of those things, one of many examples of an overnight success that took 10 years or more. right? I mean, it's still happening. So anyways, those are a few thoughts on that front that I would share.
That transitions nice into where I kind of wanted to close off here. I want you to kind of give some advice to that you can provide to students in my position, any college students out there. There's going to be a lot of students watching this who are stressed about, what they want to do after school, what career path they want to pursue. So what advice do you have for someone in my position who's in university, about to finish, with an interest in e-commerce or entrepreneurship, and they're not really sure where to start?
I think what I would say, a couple of points. One is just start doing stuff. So it's not overthinking it. It's not thinking of all the reasons why not to do something. By getting, I don't know if you could see my background, but it's the quote, the man in the arena. Just get in the arena, start doing stuff, start failing, but you're in it and you're creating. Like that's the biggest thing, is like, if you're gonna create something, create. You don't need to criticize, because we could spend so much time just criticizing and talking about things that don't work and our problems, but just commit to creating and continuing. I think that's basically it. Find things that you care about. So take some time to think about the things you naturally do and gravitate toward. For me, I was constantly like buying and selling things on eBay. That
Mm-hmm.
was just something that I did. And I felt like I got really good at that process and positioning products and differentiating from everything else that was out there. And that was something I just naturally did. And I was always just kind of tinkering with those sorts of things. So think about, what are the things you naturally do, and who cares if it doesn't fit into what you think you should be doing, because there's, again, infinite opportunity and infinite ways to find joy in your life. And I think the biggest thing for me and us, I think at Chubbies, was we were working on something we cared about. We felt it was a mission to bring this feeling of the weekend to as many people as possible. And we were working with people we loved and respected, and exit aside, being in it was the win. That was the joy. So just embrace that. And it doesn't, like, titles and whatever, like, doesn't matter. Just like work your face off and devote yourself and commit. Don't complain, and just go. I think if you do that, and not that I never criticized or never complained, blah, 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 but I was at my best and we were all at our best. And I think, looking back, if I would do more of these things, um, I think more success, more joy, more um, more peace and fun would have resulted. So those would be my pieces of advice.
Great advice. Um, I know we're running out of time here, Preston, but one last quick question. So Chubbies was acquired in 2021. You co-founded Loop Returns. I imagine you're doing a lot of work there now. I know you're also invested in several companies. What does the future kind of hold for you? What are you looking forward to most in your career and in life?
I think one thing is trying to give back as much as possible to, let's call it, this consumer brand building ecosystem. I mean, I've just been so blessed and given so much by the Shopify ecosystem, essentially, and made so many mistakes, learned so many things, got very lucky. So to the extent I can share everything I and we have learned through making all of the mistakes in the book, that's something that is very, very meaningful and important to me. And I hope it's helping people. So that's manifesting right now and me just writing on LinkedIn. Uh, I am excited about doing something new. And there's a lot of problems to solve out there. And there are a lot of brands who are navigating some really interesting things that at Chubbies we were really um, looking back, fortunate to have navigated earlier than most. So I think, I mean, I'm someone who just loves the process of trying to find a problem and build a solution. So, but most importantly, it's how can I just be as helpful as possible to the ecosystem, helping people build brands that are that last a long time, that are very profitable, that people love is where I'm finding the most joy right now.
Yeah, it's super inspiring, Preston. Thanks again for chatting with me this morning, and I know your insights will be very inspiring for many students contemplating the entrepreneurial path and for what life holds after university. So can't thank you enough. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, James. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I do hope it was helpful.
And for people who want to continue following your journey, what would you recommend? LinkedIn at
Yeah,
Preston
LinkedIn.
Rutherford?
Just search Preston Rutherford on LinkedIn. There's a little shorts emoji in between my first and last name, and just give me a follow. And comment on my stuff and let me know like what's interesting, what's not, what's stupid, what's causing questions, all that kind of stuff. I would really love. I'm learning a ton by going through the process, so it's like a collective learning process.
Great. Thank you so much, Preston.
Thanks, James.